There is a moment in life that feels strangely quiet, a moment when you're not angry, not sad, not defeated, just unsure. Unsure of why your life feels slightly tilted, unsure of what version of yourself you're supposed to be living right now, unsure of how you somehow drifted away from the person you imagined you'd become. It happens slowly, like a fog that doesn't show up as a storm, but as a soft haze that covers your vision one layer at a time. And then one morning, you wake up, look around your life, and think, wait, how did I get here? Not in a dramatic way, not like a movie moment where you drop everything and run off to the mountains. It's more subtle, more private, more real. It's the kind of confusion you don't even admit to yourself right away. Because part of you still believes you should have it figured out by now. Part of you thinks everyone else is moving forward with confidence while you're stuck in the same emotional place, asking the same questions on repeat. But this chapter is where we start telling the truth, not to the world, just to yourself. Because you can never find direction if you keep pretending you're not lost. You can never build a stronger version of you if you keep wearing the mask of the fine person. And you can never shift your life until you admit you're standing on the wrong road. So let's talk about this feeling deeply. Let's walk into it without fear. Let's understand the psychology behind it so you stop blaming yourself for something millions of people go through silently. You're not broken. You're not late. You're not falling apart. You're just at the moment where your old identity no longer fits you, and that is not a failure. That is a beginning. Let's break it down. This chapter is about that exact instant. The one where you look at your life and feel like a stickman standing in a room full of furniture that used to belong to someone else. Everything looks familiar, yet everything feels slightly wrong. The couch is yours, but you don't sit on it the same way. Your routine is yours, but it doesn't feel like your routine anymore. Your thoughts are yours, but they feel borrowed from a different season of your life. It's like wearing a jacket you loved years ago. You put it on, and suddenly it just feels tight around the shoulders. Not terrible, just wrong in a way that makes you stop and think. This is the identity shift, the internal door creaking open. The quiet realization that the person you became by accident is not the person you want to be on purpose. This is where life gets interesting. Because this moment, the moment you can't explain, is the beginning of your transformation. Let's talk about why it feels so uncomfortable. Your brain loves familiarity, it loves patterns, it loves routines, even the unhealthy ones. That's why you'll keep doing the same things even when they drain you. The mind prefers the known frustration over the unknown possibility. Your identity, even when outdated, feels safer than change. But then something happens. Your inner self, the real you, starts whispering. This whisper is soft at first. A tiny thought like, I don't think this is me anymore. Or I thought I'd be somewhere else by now. Or this can't be everything. At this stage, most people panic. They think something is wrong with them. They think they're behind. They think they messed up their life so badly that the confusion they feel is a punishment. That is not what's happening. What you're experiencing is the mind waking up. It's you becoming too big for your old life, too aware for your old habits, too evolved for the environment that once matched you. You're not lost. You're growing. But growth feels like being lost because your inner world expands before your outer world updates. Your thoughts change before your life changes. Your priorities shift before your reality catches up. Your identity evolves before your path becomes clear. And this in-between space is what feels uncomfortable. Imagine a stickman standing on a bridge between two mountains. Behind him is everything familiar. Ahead of him is everything new, but the bridge has no signs, no arrows, no labels, just open space. This is the moment people fear the most. The moment with no instructions. The moment where you just have to stand there with your thoughts and acknowledge that you're not the same person you used to be. This is where the overthinking detox becomes helpful. Not because you're drowning in thoughts, but because your thoughts are trying to reorganize themselves into a new identity. The mind overthinks when it senses change but doesn't know what shape that change will take. And that is what's happening right now. You're in a psychological renovation. Your mind is rearranging the furniture of your identity. It's removing the old chairs of outdated habits. It's pushing out the old table of expectations created by people who don't even know who you've become. The discomfort is not failure. it's construction. Think of this as you standing in an empty room. At first, the emptiness feels scary. It feels like you lost everything. It feels like you're starting from zero. But slowly, the emptiness becomes space. Space for new decisions, space for new dreams, space for a self you haven't met yet. Your identity is stretching, your perspective is widening, your ambitions are warming up in the background. The confusion is the preparation. Let's go deeper into this. When you start feeling lost, you are actually running into a psychological mismatch between your inner world and your outer life. Your mind evolves every day. Your routines often do not. So eventually, the gap becomes noticeable. This is the same gap that leads to anxiety, low energy, and that weird sense of misalignment you can't explain. This is why the anxiety detox exists. To understand that most anxiety isn't fear, it's misalignment. It's your life lagging behind your identity. Think about that. Your inner self wants one thing. Your outer life is doing something else. Your day-to-day actions no longer reflect who you are. That is the root of the lost feeling. It's like walking with a shadow that doesn't match your body anymore. At this stage, you have two choices. Either you shrink back into the old version of yourself just because it's familiar, or you let the new identity pull you forward. Most people choose shrinking, not because they want to, but because it feels safer, because they think they're not ready for the life they actually want. But here's something people rarely admit. Feeling lost is not a sign that you're behind. It's a sign that you're about to outgrow yourself. Every big shift begins with confusion. Every breakthrough begins with discomfort. Every new chapter begins with a sentence that does not make sense at first. So if you're feeling lost, if your identity feels blurry, if your routines feel outdated, this is not a crisis. This is a transition. Let me paint another image for you. Imagine a stickman standing at a crossroads. One path is smooth, familiar, predictable. The other is foggy, unknown. You don't see where it leads. You don't know what's on the other side. Most people stay on the smooth path even when it leads to a life they don't want. But the foggy path is where your lost feeling is coming from. That path is calling you, even if you can't see it clearly. Your intuition is nudging you. Your mind is trying to expand. Your identity is upgrading to a version of you that finally fits the life you've always wanted. But the upgrade feels like confusion before it feels like clarity. Now let's talk about why you resist this feeling. You resist it because you think you're supposed to always know where you're going. You resist it because you compare your invisible battles to other people's visible victories. You resist it because every time you feel even a small spark of change, you shut it down with the fear of failing. This is where the self-worth formula becomes relevant. Because feeling lost becomes 10 times heavier when your self-worth depends on certainty. When you tell yourself you're only allowed to move forward if you have the perfect plan. When you believe you must earn clarity before taking the first step. But clarity doesn't work like that. Clarity is a reward. You only receive it after you move, after you explore, after you breathe through the confusion and let yourself grow. Feeling lost is not the opposite of clarity, it's the beginning of it. Let's unpack something deeper. Most people don't realize that feeling lost usually shows up when you're outgrowing an old identity faster than you're building the new one. Your mind is stretching, your perspective is evolving, but your habits are still stuck in the past. So you feel like you're floating between versions of yourself, unsure of which one to commit to. This floating is uncomfortable, but it is essential because the person you are becoming needs space. Space to form new habits, space to choose new priorities, space to breathe without the expectations that once controlled you. That's why the energy reset matters here. Not because you're tired, but because your mental energy is being pulled in opposite directions. One part of you wants to grow, the other part wants to stay safe. The lost feeling comes from that tug of war. So here's the truth you need to hear. You are not lost. You are redirecting. You are not behind. You are building. You are not stuck. You are evolving faster than your environment. And the discomfort is simply the echo of your past self being replaced. Let's bring this back to the core of the chapter. The moment you realize you're not who you thought you'd be is not a collapse. It is a doorway. Imagine a stickman standing in front of a closed door with light shining underneath it. He doesn't know what's behind it. He doesn't know what step comes next. He only knows his current room feels too small now. That door's your identity shift. That door's your next direction. That door is your becoming, and your lost feeling is simply your hand resting on the doorknob, one gentle push away from change. This moment might feel like failure, it might feel like uncertainty, and it might feel like you lost yourself. But what if this is the moment you finally find yourself? Not the version you imagine, not the version others expected, the real one. The one that has been waiting behind the noise. The one you weren't ready to meet before. The one that only shows up when you stop pretending everything is fine. You are not the old you anymore. You're not the future you yet. You are the emerging version. And that is exactly where you need to be. This is chapter 1, the awakening, the identity shift, the quiet realization that the life you are meant to build is calling you. Before we move on, take one breath. Inhale the confusion. Exhale the blame. You are not who you thought you'd be. You are someone better forming slowly. Ready for chapter 2? Chapter 2. The invisible weight you've been carrying without knowing. There's a weight you carry that nobody sees. You don't talk about it. You don't show it. You just wake up every morning and try to pretend it isn't there. It's not a physical weight. It's not a dramatic one. It's not the kind that makes you collapse in the middle of the day. It's quieter, heavier, more dangerous. It's the weight of unprocessed thoughts, the weight of emotions you never had time to feel, the weight of expectations that don't even belong to you anymore, the weight of all the versions of yourself you tried to be. And the crazy part is, you've carried it for so long that you don't even realize it's there. It's like a stickman walking with a heavy backpack he never checked. Over the years, he just kept adding things in, old worries, old mistakes, old guilt, old pressure, layer after layer, until one day the backpack became so heavy that every step started feeling like a struggle. But since the weight increased slowly, he never noticed the moment it became too much. That is what this chapter is about. The invisible heaviness that builds up slowly. The emotional gravity that pulls you down even when life looks stable. The mental clutter that creates the illusion that you're lost, when in reality, you're just overwhelmed. If you've ever said to yourself, "I'm tired, but I don't know from what," then this chapter's for you. Let's break this weight down. Half of the heaviness you feel doesn't come from problems. It comes from carrying unresolved thoughts. Your brain is constantly trying to finish 1,000 open tabs, every unfinished task, every forgotten plan, every emotional knot. It's all there, running quietly in the background like a phone app you forgot to close. This is what the overthinking detox touches on. The moment your brain senses unfinished, it keeps working behind the scenes, even when you're not thinking about it consciously, even when you're just sitting there scrolling, even when you're at rest. Your mind is running a hidden marathon, and the weight shows up as low motivation, emotional confusion, mental fatigue, that lost fog you can't shake off. Let's go deeper. Part of this weight also comes from expectations, not yours, but the ones you accidentally inherited. The expectations your family had for you. The expectations society programmed into you. The expectations your younger self set when they had no idea how life actually works. Imagine a stickman holding a giant stone labeled should. I should be further. I should be happier. I should have figured it out by now. I should have a plan. I should be stronger. That stone gets heavier every year because should is never satisfied. It always moves the goalpost. It always whispers that whatever you're doing is not enough. This weight doesn't make you lost. It makes you exhausted. And exhaustion feels like being lost. Another part of the invisible weight comes from suppressed emotions. Life doesn't give you time to feel everything. Sometimes you're hurt, but you keep moving. Sometimes you're overwhelmed, but you push through. Sometimes you're confused, but you keep smiling because you don't want to explain. You bottle feelings hoping they will find their own way out. But emotions don't disappear. They store themselves inside you until your body begins to speak the things your mouth never said. This is where the anxiety detox becomes important. Anxiety often appears when your emotional system has too many unprocessed files. It's your mind saying, "We need to sort this mess." But you don't know where to begin. So instead of healing, you carry the weight. Let's explore another layer. Some of the heaviness comes from comparison, not active comparison, not the obvious kind. It's the invisible comparison that happens silently. You see someone's progress, you see someone's confidence, you see someone's figured it out energy, and you start feeling like your own life is behind schedule. It's not jealousy, it's fear. Fear that you missed something, fear that you took too many wrong turns, fear that you wasted too much time. So, without realizing it, you add another stone to the backpack, a stone called I'm not doing enough. Let's talk about guilt, one of the heaviest stones of all. There is guilt that makes sense, but most of the guilt you carry is imagined. You feel guilty for resting. You feel guilty for taking time for yourself. You feel guilty for not being perfect at everything. You feel guilty for needing a break. You feel guilty for choosing yourself over people who never chose you. This guilt drains your energy faster than anything else. It makes you feel lost even when you're on the right path. This is why the energy reset exists. Because you cannot feel clear when you are emotionally overdrawn. Imagine a phone with 2% battery. Everything feels stressful. Everything feels urgent. Even small tasks feel like mountains. Not because the tasks are hard, but because the battery is low. Your emotional battery works the same way. When it's low, everything feels heavy, everything feels complicated, everything feels wrong. You're not lost, you're drained, and drainage creates the illusion of being lost. There's another part of the invisible weight, one most people don't talk about, the fear of disappointing yourself. You made promises to yourself years ago. Dreams, plans, visions. You imagined a certain level of growth by a certain age. And now when you feel off track, you blame yourself for not being the person you expected to become. This disappointment is heavy because it hurts quietly. It doesn't show up as breakdowns. It shows up as numbness, as self-doubt, as the feeling that life is moving but you're not. This is a moment where the self-worth formula becomes a lifeline. Because your worth cannot be tied to the speed of your progress, or the success of your decisions, or the approval of people who don't live inside your mind. Your worth is not a grade, it is a foundation. But when you forget that, the weight grows heavier. Let's talk about the psychological root of this invisible weight. Your mind is a container, but not a perfect one. It doesn't erase things automatically. It doesn't delete old fears. It doesn't remove outdated beliefs. It stores everything until you actively process it. So years of thoughts and emotions pile up inside. And eventually the container gets full. Not full of trauma, just full of unorganized mental files. Small things you were supposed to deal with but never had the time. Unfinished moments, unresolved conversations, unfelt feelings. This fullness becomes heaviness. And heaviness makes you feel lost, not because you can't move forward, but because the weight pulls your attention backward. When you carry too much emotional weight, you don't see the future clearly. You see your past everywhere. Imagine walking through a forest with fog behind you. The fog follows you. It covers your path. It blurs your direction. But the fog is not the future. It is your own mental clutter trying to catch up. Most people think the fog means they are on the wrong path, but really, it means they are carrying too much. This brings us to a crucial point. You cannot feel your direction until you lighten your load. This does not mean dropping everything. It means recognizing what you've been holding. Let's talk about the most hidden layer of all, silent expectations. These are the expectations you never agreed to but somehow inherited. Being strong all the time, always fixing yourself, always knowing what to do, always being productive, never slowing down, never getting confused, never needing help. These expectations crush you quietly, because no human can meet them. And every time you fall short, you add another stone into the backpack. I should be better. But here's the truth you forget. You are not designed to carry everything. You're designed to process, to let go, to rebuild, to grow in seasons, not in straight lines. Feeling lost is often just the signal that you've reached emotional capacity. Your mind needs space. Your heart needs quiet. Your identity needs room to stretch. Let's form an image. Imagine a stick man holding balloons with strings tied around his wrists. Each balloon is a responsibility, a memory, a fear, a hope, a regret, a dream. One balloon is manageable, 2 is fine, 10 is heavy, 20 pulls you in every direction. You don't know which one to let go of because you're scared each balloon is important. So instead of choosing, you hold all of them, and the weight becomes unbearable. Being lost is not about lacking direction. It is about having too much pulling you away from that direction. This chapter's your invitation to finally put the backpack down. Not to throw it away, just set it on the ground for a moment and ask, what in here is actually mine? Which expectations belong to me? Which fears are outdated? Which emotions need attention? Which dreams still feel alive? Which beliefs need upgrading? This is where clarity begins, not with answers, with unloading. Before you find the path, you must free the walker. This is why the focus reset exists. Your mind cannot focus on where you're going if it's overwhelmed by where you've been. Let's slow down for a second. Take a breath. Imagine the stickman finally opening the backpack. One item at a time, gently, without judgment. This chapter is about giving yourself that moment. A moment no one else can give you. A moment you deserve after carrying the weight of years on your shoulders. Here's the emotional truth. You are not weak for feeling heavy. You are not behind for feeling overwhelmed. You are not lost for feeling unsure. You are human. And being human means collecting experiences faster than you can process them. This weight does not mean you failed. It means you lived. But now it is time to lighten the load. Not all at once, but slowly, patiently, intentionally. Because the clearer your inner world becomes, the more your direction reveals itself. Feeling lost is not the problem. Caring too much is. When you finally place one emotional stone down, you will feel something subtle. A shift, a spark, a breath you haven't felt in a long time. That breath is the beginning of clarity, the beginning of direction, the beginning of peace. And it starts with this chapter, with recognizing the invisible weight, with naming it, with understanding it, with letting it be seen. You cannot release what you refuse to acknowledge. This is where your transformation begins. Not with action, but with awareness. This weight has shaped you, but it does not define you. And as you move forward through the next chapters, you will feel lighter, clearer, stronger. Now you're ready. Ready for Chapter 3. Chapter 3. The road you're on isn't wrong, it's just unmarked. There is a moment in every person's life when they stop walking, look around, and wonder if they somehow took the wrong road. Not because the road is terrible, not because they hate their life, but because nothing around them feels like it has a clear direction anymore. It's like being a stickman walking on a long, empty path with no signs, no arrows, no guides, just miles of quiet roads stretching forward without explanation. Most people assume that silence means they are going the wrong way. But silence is not a sign of failure. Silence is the space before clarity. This chapter is about understanding something people rarely say out loud. Your road is not wrong. Your road is simply unmarked. Let's talk about this honestly. Growing up, life feels like a series of signs. Adults point at things and tell you what to do. Teachers hand you tasks and tell you where to stand. There are instructions. There are checklists. There are steps. Then one day, adulthood quietly takes the signs away. The road keeps going, but the arrows disappear. And you're left standing there thinking, what am I supposed to do now? You expect life to give you clarity, but life waits for you to make clarity. This is the first truth of this chapter. Direction is not found. Direction is made. But making direction feels terrifying when the road is unmarked. Let's slow down and imagine something. Picture a stickman standing at the entrance of a huge desert. The sand stretches endlessly. There are no paths carved. There are no footsteps to follow, only open space. Most people panic in this scenario. They think the lack of path means they shouldn't walk. They think their life is stuck because the next step isn't obvious. But here's the psychological reality. Just because a path is not visible doesn't mean it's wrong. It means you are the one who will create it. Before we explore this deeper, I want you to understand a fundamental idea. Your life is not supposed to look like a map someone hands you. It's supposed to look like a map you draw as you go. But we are taught the opposite. We grow up thinking that our path must be clearly labeled. This is your purpose. This is your career. This is your timeline. This is your next step. And when life becomes quiet and the instructions disappear, we panic. We assume we did something wrong. We assume we took a wrong turn. But that assumption is the real mistake. Let's go deeper. Feeling lost on an unmarked road does not mean your life is meaningless. It means you have outgrown the old signs. It means your next chapter requires personal creativity, not external instructions. Your brain just isn't used to this freedom yet. This is where overthinking kicks in. Not because you're broken, but because your mind is trying to find signs that no longer exist. You look backward. You analyze everything you did. You obsess about decisions. You replay moments that don't matter anymore. This is where the overthinking detox becomes valuable. Not to shut your thoughts down, but to remind you that unmarked roads confuse everyone at first. Let's look at the psychology behind this. Humans crave certainty. Certainty feels like safety. Certainty feels like control. Certainty feels like the ability to predict what comes next. But life does not reward certainty. Life rewards movement. Clarity comes after steps, not before. Imagine walking in a fog. When you stand still, you see nothing. When you take one small step, you see slightly more. Another step and the fog moves again. The road reveals itself through movement. Standing still makes you think you're lost. Moving forward reminds you that you're not. Let's explore why unmarked roads feel like failure. One reason is comparison. You see people whose paths look clear. You see progress. You see success. You see confidence. But you don't see their fog. You don't see their sleepless nights. You don't see the moments they stood in the exact same uncertainty. Everyone's path looks clear only in hindsight. This is why the self-worth formula exists. Because feeling lost becomes painful when you think your worth depends on perfect clarity. But direction does not make you worthy. You are worthy even in confusion. Now let's talk about expectations, the quiet enemy of unmarked roads. You expect yourself to know the way. You expect your life to make sense by now. You expect your passions to be fully defined. You expect your next step to be obvious. These expectations crush your ability to discover your path naturally. Unmarked roads require curiosity, not pressure. Let's dive into a metaphor. Imagine a stickman walking through a forest. There are no paths, only trees, bushes, and scattered sunlight. He takes a few steps forward. He looks around. Still no path. He takes a few more. The ground changes slightly. A trail begins to form without him noticing. By the time he looks behind, the path he walked is now visible. But it wasn't visible before he walked it. This is you. This is your life. This is your unmarked road. The path is created by walking. This is where the anxiety shows up. When the mind doesn't see a path, it assumes danger. Not physical danger, emotional danger, social danger, future danger. Your mind says, what if I fail? What if I waste time? What if I choose wrong? But these fears don't come from the present. They come from the unknown. This is where the anxiety detox becomes helpful. It teaches you that uncertainty is not a threat. It's a blank canvas. But most people fear blank canvases, not because they lack talent, but because they don't trust themselves to paint. Now let's talk about energy. Emotional energy, mental energy, the invisible fuel that keeps you hopeful. Walking on a marked road requires energy. Walking on an unmarked road requires more. Not because the road is harder, but because your mind is doing double work. You're walking and navigating at the same time. This is why unmarked seasons feel draining. Not because you're weak, but because navigating the unknown naturally consumes more emotional energy. This is where the energy reset becomes relevant, not as a rescue, but as a reminder that clarity requires fuel. You cannot navigate the fog on an empty tank. Let's address something deeper. Most people mistake quiet seasons for wrong seasons. When life becomes quiet, they assume they're stuck. When progress slows, they assume they failed. When the road feels empty, they assume they took a wrong turn. But silence is not punishment. Silence is preparation. Imagine a stickman standing on a mountain ridge. He wants to hear the next echo. But echoes only happen if you stop making noise. Your inner direction works the same way. Sometimes the universe removes the signs so you learn to listen to yourself. Sometimes the instructions disappear so your inner voice becomes louder. Sometimes the road becomes unmarked because your next chapter requires a version of you that can think independently. This is where we shift perspective. What if the confusion you feel right now is not confusion, but space? Space where a new identity can breathe. Space where new dreams can form. Space where the future can unfold without pressure. Unmarked does not mean wrong, it means open. Let's talk about purpose for a moment. People assume purpose is a destination, like a glowing treasure box at the end of the road. But purpose is not a destination. Purpose is a direction. It changes as you change. It grows as you grow. It evolves as you evolve. Unmarked roads are part of that evolution. If your road had signs everywhere, you would never explore. You would never question. You would never grow beyond the limits of the path someone else created. Unmarked roads force authenticity. They force you to ask yourself, what do I want? What matters to me? What direction feels alive? What pace feels sustainable? What dreams still have a heartbeat? These questions shape the path ahead. Let's address one more layer. Fear of choosing the wrong direction. People freeze because they think there is one correct road and many wrong roads. But life does not work like a multiple choice question. Every road gives you something. One road gives you experience. Another gives you resilience. Another gives you clarity. Another gives you self-discovery. Another gives you strength. There is no wasted road. There is only the road that teaches you what the next road requires. This is why the focus reset matters. Because you cannot create a path while staring at every possible mistake. You choose direction not by eliminating fear, but by accepting that fear is part of movement. Let's bring this chapter together. You feel lost not because you are failing. You feel lost because you are walking in a season of life that provides freedom instead of instructions. Freedom is intimidating when you've been trained to follow signs, but deep down you are ready. You are ready for a life that you create instead of inherit. You are ready for a road that reflects your identity instead of someone else's expectations. You are ready for the kind of growth that doesn't come with maps. Let me paint one final image. A stickman standing at a blank intersection. No signs, no arrows, just an open landscape. He wonders which direction is right. He wonders which one leads to success. He wonders which one is safe. Then he takes a small step in the direction that feels honest. Not perfect, not certain, just honest. That step is the beginning. The path appears behind him, not in front of him. Your life works the same way. The road you're on isn't wrong. It's just waiting for you to walk it. Waiting for you to create the meaning. Waiting for you to shape the direction. And with every chapter you move through, the fog gets lighter. The load gets smaller. The identity becomes clearer. You're not lost, you're becoming. Chapter 4. The 3 lies your brain tells you when you feel behind. There are moments in life when you look around and feel like everyone else is speeding ahead while you're stuck in slow motion. Not because you're lazy, not because you're unmotivated, but because something inside you whispers a set of lies so quietly you don't even realize you're believing them. This chapter is about those lies. The lies your brain tells you when you feel behind, the lies that distort your reality, the lies that turn normal confusion into self-punishment. These lies are powerful because they don't feel like lies. They feel like facts. They feel like truth. They feel like the obvious explanation for why life seems harder than it should be. But once you expose them, the entire world opens again. Let's begin. There are 3 lies your mind repeats when you feel behind. Lie 1, everyone else is ahead. Lie 2, you're late. Lie 3, you should have figured it out by now. Each of these lies shapes your reality in ways you don't notice. Each creates unnecessary pressure that drains your energy. Each keeps you stuck in emotional quicksand. Let's break them down slowly and honestly. Lie 1. Everyone else is ahead. This lie begins subtly. You scroll through your phone. You see people celebrating wins. You see people posting milestones. You see confidence. You see direction. You see progress. And the brain does something dangerous. It connects dots that don't exist. It takes someone else's visible moment and compares it to your invisible journey. Imagine a stickman standing on a hill looking down into a valley. He sees other stickmen on different hills. Some look higher, some look further, some look brighter. He assumes they started earlier. He assumes they had an easier climb. He assumes their hill has better views. But here's the truth he can't see. Each hill has its own fog. Each hill has parts that are invisible from the outside. Each hill hides the messy journey behind the final picture. The brain lies because it only sees the highlight, not the struggle. Comparison is an illusion created by angles. You see someone's chapter 20 from the outside and compare it to your chapter 3 from the inside. But here's something your brain forgets. Progress does not follow a universal timeline. It loops. It stalls. It accelerates suddenly. It pauses without warning. It jumps forward when you least expect it. This is where the self-worth formula becomes deeply relevant. Because when you tie your worth to comparison, you lose the ability to see your own progress clearly. Let's talk psychology for a moment. Your mind is designed to scan for threats. In modern life, the biggest threat your mind sees is falling behind socially. Being less successful, being less confident, being less organized. Your brain exaggerates these differences to protect you. It's trying to motivate you, to help you catch up, to push you forward. But in doing so, it tricks you into believing that everyone else is ahead. You feel behind because your mind is working with incomplete data. People rarely show the truth. They show the curated version, the polished part, the finished moment. You rarely see the setbacks. You rarely see the loneliness. You rarely see the nights they doubted themselves. Your brain compares your raw footage to someone else's edited trailer. Of course, it feels like they're ahead. But they aren't. They're just visible. Your progress is still forming quietly inside you. Let's move deeper. Lie 2. You're late. This is one of the heaviest emotional lies your brain ever tells. It rings in moments of silence. It grows stronger when life slows down. It becomes louder when you're unsure of your next step. You're late. Late for what? Late according to who? Late compared to which timeline? Your brain never answers these questions. It just throws the word late like a shadow over your day. But lateness is not real. It's a mental illusion created by imagined deadlines. Think about it. You never signed a contract that said you must find yourself by 20. You never agreed to build the perfect life by 30. You never set an exact age for having clarity, confidence, or direction. But your brain did something strange. It absorbed the timelines of other people. Not intentionally. Just quietly. Over years. Through conversations, movies, cultural expectations, fear, pressure. One day you wake up and feel like your life is off schedule. Imagine a stickman running on a track with no finish line. Suddenly, he sees other runners, even though they're on different tracks entirely. He speeds up. He panics. He asks himself why they look faster, stronger, more certain. But here's the twist. Each runner's on a completely separate track, with different terrain, different starting points, different weather. Your brain forgets this. It merges all the tracks into one timeline. That's how the lie grows. Now let's talk about identity. Some people bloom early, some bloom late, some bloom suddenly, some bloom quietly. Some bloom multiple times. There is no standard timing for becoming yourself. This is where the anxiety detox becomes helpful, because anxiety is often the emotional response to imagined deadlines. You feel like you're failing time itself. You feel like the clock is judging you. You feel like you missed something other people caught. But your timeline is not late. It's yours. One of the most important psychological truths is this. People grow when they're ready, not when they're expected to. You cannot rush identity. You cannot speed up self-discovery. You cannot force clarity. Growth happens when your inner world is prepared. If you feel late, you're not late. You're simply in a season of internal preparation. Let's move to the third lie. Lie 3. You should have figured it out by now. This lie hurts the most because it feels like a personal failure. It feels like an accusation. It feels like the voice of disappointment echoing inside you. But this lie is built on a false belief that life has a finish line of certainty. It doesn't. Nobody ever fully figures it out. Not even the people who look like they have perfect direction. You're not supposed to figure life out. You're supposed to figure it out as you go. Your brain lies because it craves perfection. It wants to eliminate risk, uncertainty, embarrassment, mistakes. So it creates this unrealistic expectation that your life must be fully understood before you move forward. But clarity is never the starting point. Clarity is the side effect of movement. Imagine a stickman standing in front of a giant maze. He keeps telling himself, I should already know the way. I should understand the layout. I should have memorized the turns. But he has never walked the maze before. This is his first time. This is his only time. This is his maze. Expecting yourself to know the path before you walk it is one of the most unfair things you can do to yourself. This is why the focus reset is helpful. Because focus is not about knowing the perfect destination. It's about choosing one honest step and committing to it long enough to see where it leads. Now, let's talk about the deeper psychology behind this lie. You learn from a young age that answers are rewarded. You learn that certainty makes you good. You learn that confusion is shameful. You learn that not knowing is a problem. But confusion is not a problem. It's the beginning of wisdom. Not knowing is not a flaw. It's the space where curiosity can breathe. Feeling lost does not mean you failed. It means you're becoming aware of the life you actually want instead of the one you inherited. Let's explore another perspective. You are not supposed to figure it out by now because it keeps changing. Your desires evolve. Your priorities shift. Your identity grows. Your vision expands. Your understanding deepens. What you wanted 5 years ago is not the same as what you want now. How can you figure life out when life itself keeps updating? This brings us to the emotional truth of this chapter. These lies don't come from weakness. They come from fear. Fear of being left behind. Fear of choosing wrong. Fear of disappointing yourself. Fear of wasting time. Fear of not becoming the person you imagined. Fear creates illusions. Illusions shape beliefs. Beliefs shape emotions. Your job is not to destroy the fear. Your job is to recognize when fear is pretending to be truth. Let's tie these three lies together. Lie 1 makes you look outward. Lie 2 makes you look backward. Lie 3 makes you blame yourself. And all three keep you from looking inward, which is where clarity actually lives. Imagine a stickman walking through fog. He stands still because he thinks he's behind. He hesitates because he thinks others are ahead. He freezes because he thinks he should know the way. But the fog lifts only when he starts walking. Movement clears the mind. Movement breaks illusions. Movement reveals the next step. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not supposed to have everything figured out. You're in the exact chapter you're meant to be in, learning exactly what this chapter was designed to teach. These three lies lose their power the moment you see them for what they are. Protective stories your brain tells during uncertainty. Not truth, not destiny, not identity, just stories. Chapter 5, the one tiny decision that quietly shifts your entire direction. There is a myth people believe about transformation. They imagine it happens through some dramatic moment. A big choice, a bold leap, a life-changing event that flips everything overnight. But transformation rarely looks like that. Real change begins with one tiny, almost invisible decision. A decision so small you barely notice making it. A decision that doesn't feel powerful at first, but silently starts shifting the direction of your entire life. This chapter is about that decision, not the big ones, not the loud ones, not the ones your whole family hears about. The small one, the soft one, the one that whispers instead of screams. The decision that moves you 1 degree. Just one. But 1 degree, when followed long enough, becomes an entirely new path. Let's break this down slowly. You don't change your life by trying to rebuild everything at once. You change your life by choosing one thing you can do today. One small act of honesty, one small act of discipline, one small act of courage, one small shift that starts aligning your inner world with your outer actions. This is what identity-based decisions look like. The decision is tiny, but the identity behind the decision is huge. Let's imagine a stickman standing on a long road. He wants to reach a new destination. He wants a better life. He wants clarity. He wants strength. But the road feels overwhelming. Too long, too unclear, too heavy. Most people freeze at this point. They believe they need a complete plan before moving. They believe they need perfect motivation. They believe they need full clarity. But what they really need is a single step. One micro decision, one gentle shift in direction. The human brain is built to fear big changes. It's wired to stay safe. It's designed to avoid anything that looks like a threat. And big transformations feel threatening, not because they are dangerous, but because they disrupt your identity. This is where the overthinking detox becomes helpful. It reminds you that the mind overthinks not because you're weak, but because the brain fears losing control. Big decisions look like loss of control. Small decisions look safe. That's why tiny decisions work. They bypass your fear system. They slip under the radar of your inner resistance. They feel harmless, so your brain allows them. And once you make one tiny decision, your identity shifts 1 degree, then another and another. Suddenly your life is moving again. Let's go deeper. Most people live in two realities at the same time. Reality 1, who they are right now. Reality 2, who they want to become. The gap between these two creates emotional tension. It creates confusion. It creates the feeling of being lost. And when that gap feels too big, people do nothing. They think, I need a full life makeover. I need a total restart. I need to change everything. But the full makeover isn't the solution. It's the pressure that's keeping them stuck. Identity doesn't change in explosions. Identity changes in whispers. Let's explore the psychology behind this. Your identity is built from small, repeated actions, not from grand moments, not from dramatic declarations, but from tiny behaviors you repeat long enough that your mind starts saying, this is who I am. If you meditate once, nothing changes. If you meditate daily for 10 minutes, your identity shifts. Your brain says, I'm the type of person who cares about mental clarity. If you read 2 pages tonight, it looks small. If you read 2 pages every night, your brain says, I'm the type of person who grows consistently. If you take a 5-minute walk today, nothing happens. But if you keep doing it, your mind rewires to think, I'm the type of person who moves toward energy. This is where the energy reset becomes relevant. It teaches you that your energy isn't broken. It's just misaligned. Energy follows identity. Identity follows tiny decisions. Now let's talk about the emotional power of micro decisions. Small decisions lower the emotional cost. Your brain doesn't panic. Your nervous system doesn't resist. Your fear doesn't activate. And when fear doesn't activate, your identity can evolve. This is why massive change starts gently. Let's imagine a simple example. A stick man wakes up. He feels overwhelmed. His mind is foggy. He doesn't know his purpose, his path, or his next chapter. He could panic and spiral into overthinking. Or he could choose a tiny decision. Drink 1 glass of water, write 1 honest sentence, clean 1 corner of the room, walk for 5 minutes, read 1 page, stretch for 30 seconds. It looks ridiculous at first. It looks like nothing. But something subtle happens. He starts trusting himself again. His brain starts relaxing. His identity starts shifting. Tiny wins rebuild self-respect. Now let's explore something deeper. Most people don't realize that identity-based decisions are powerful because they create emotional alignment. When your actions are tiny but honest, your heart and mind feel congruent again. You stop pretending. You stop forcing. You stop collapsing under the weight of unrealistic expectations. You simply move 1 degree closer to the person you want to be. 1 degree is small, but after a year, 1 degree becomes a completely different life. Let's explore the 3 types of micro decisions that quietly shift everything. Type 1, the decision to stop lying to yourself. This one is small, but life-changing. You stop saying, I'll start tomorrow. You stop saying it's not a big deal. You stop saying, I don't care. You stop pretending the fog will clear by itself. You make one tiny decision to tell the truth. I'm overwhelmed. I'm tired. I'm lost. I'm capable of more. Honesty is a small step, but it breaks years of inner denial. This small truth is often the emotional trigger people feel as a single word. A quiet spark, a moment of alignment, a breath they didn't realize they needed. Honesty is not a breakthrough. It's the door to one. Type 2, the decision to move even when it's imperfect. Perfection kills more dreams than failure ever will. Your brain blocks movement because it thinks it needs the perfect plan. But movement is what creates the plan. This is where the focus reset becomes crucial. Focus is not about eliminating distractions. It's about choosing one honest action even when the path is unclear. The tiny decision to move breaks the paralysis of self-doubt. It says to your mind, we may not know everything, but we're going somewhere. Movement creates clarity. Stillness creates fear. Type 3. The decision to choose identity. Over motivation. Motivation is unreliable. It fluctuates. It disappears when you need it. It doesn't show up on bad days. Identity is stable. Identity remains even when mood changes. Identity becomes your autopilot. You don't wait for inspiration to brush your teeth. You do it because I'm the kind of person who takes care of myself. You don't need motivation to lock your door at night. You do it because I'm the kind of person who protects my space. The same applies to growth. When you shift your identity 1 degree, behavior naturally follows. This is where the self-worth formula plays a quiet role. You stop waiting to feel worthy before acting. You act, and the actions rebuild your sense of worth. Identity leads. Motivation follows. Let's explore the emotional truth behind this chapter. Feeling lost often comes from feeling powerless. Feeling like your life is too big. Feeling like your problems are too heavy. Feeling like your direction is too unclear. But tiny decisions give you your power back. Because tiny decisions are always in your control. They don't depend on good timing. They don't depend on motivation. They don't depend on perfect circumstances. You can choose a 1 degree shift at any moment. Let me give you a stickman image for this. A stickman is standing in a huge valley. Mountains surround him. He wants to reach the highest one. But the peak looks impossible. He stands there frozen. Then he takes 1 small step forward. Not toward the peak, just forward. The peak hasn't moved. The valley hasn't changed. His life still looks huge. But something inside him shifts. He is no longer standing still. That single step is the micro decision. It doesn't look like success. It doesn't look like a breakthrough. It doesn't look impressive. But it breaks the identity of stagnation. Now imagine he takes 1 small step each day. Not big steps, not heroic steps, small ones. After a month, he is halfway across the valley. After 6 months, he is climbing. After a year, he reaches a height he once thought was impossible. Tiny decisions compound. They become momentum. Momentum becomes identity. Identity becomes direction. That is how people quietly rebuild their lives. Let's address another psychological layer. Small decisions reduce overwhelm. When the brain sees a massive goal, it sees risk. It sees uncertainty. It sees effort. But when the brain sees a tiny decision, it sees possibility. 1 decision is manageable. 1 step is doable. 1 moment is enough. And suddenly the fog clears just a little. This is how clarity grows, not in lightning strikes, in gentle shifts. Let's bring this chapter to a powerful close. Your life doesn't change when you shout, I'm ready. Your life changes when you whisper, I'll take 1 step. The direction of your entire life can shift from 1 tiny, honest decision. To drink the water, to clean the corner, to read the page, to delete the distraction, to feel the emotion, to make the call, to choose the truth, to take the step. Small choices shape big identities. Identity shapes future decisions. Future decisions shape your life. Everything begins with the next tiny decision you make today. Not tomorrow, not someday, today. Chapter 6. The power of stillness when everything inside you feels loud. There comes a moment in life when your mind becomes louder than the world around you, louder than the people you love, louder than the responsibilities you carry, louder than your own sense of direction. It's the kind of loud that does not shout. It hums, it buzzes. It fills your chest with a restless pressure that feels impossible to name. You try to distract yourself. You try to keep moving. You try to outrun your own thoughts. But somehow the noise always catches up. This chapter is about something strange, something you've probably avoided without realizing it, something simple but uncomfortable. Stillness, not meditation, not zoning out, not sitting cross-legged on the floor trying to breathe like a monk. Stillness. The kind that makes you hear the thoughts you've been avoiding. The kind that makes your truth rise to the surface. The kind that feels scary because it forces you to stop running from yourself. But here's the part people don't understand. Stillness is not emptiness. Stillness is clarity. Your mind is loud because it's trying to tell you something. Something important. Something overdue, something heavy. And stillness is the doorway through which that message enters. Let's break this down slowly. Imagine a stickman standing in the middle of a giant storm. Wind, dust, leaves flying everywhere. He can't see anything. He can't hear anything. Everything is chaos. That storm is your mind on a loud day. Thoughts swirling, fears rising, memories flashing, what ifs, should haves, confusion, pressure. The storm is not a sign that you're broken. The storm is a sign that your mind is overloaded. You've been carrying too much for too long. You've been running too fast without rest. You've been pushing your limits without breathing, and eventually, the mind revolts, becomes loud, not to punish you, not to scare you, but to get your attention. Stillness is the moment the storm finally starts to calm. Stillness is when the dust settles, when the sky clears just enough that you can see where you're standing, when the noise drops low enough that you can hear your own voice again. This chapter is not about silence outside you. It's about silence inside you. Let's go deeper. We live in a world that rewards movement, moving fast, moving often, moving nonstop. If you're not doing something, if you're not improving, if you're not producing, people look at you like something is wrong. So you move, even when you're tired, even when you're overwhelmed, even when your mind is begging you to slow down. Movement becomes survival. But movement without intention becomes chaos. And that chaos lives inside your nervous system. This is where the energy reset becomes meaningful. Because most people think they are tired from work or tasks or social pressure. But often, the real exhaustion comes from mental noise. A noisy mind consumes more energy than any physical task. Now let's talk about why stillness feels so uncomfortable. When you stop moving, your thoughts become clear. When you stop distracting yourself, your emotions rise. When you stop avoiding yourself, your truth appears. And truth is intimidating. Truth asks questions you don't feel ready to answer. Truth brings memories you buried. Truth exposes the habits that drain you. Truth shines a light on the parts of your life you outgrew. Stillness makes the truth visible, and visibility creates discomfort. But discomfort is the beginning of clarity. Let me give you a simple metaphor. Imagine a glass of dirty water. If you shake it, everything becomes cloudy. The dirt mixes, the water becomes impossible to see through. But if you place the glass down and let it sit for a while, the dirt settles at the bottom. The water becomes clearer. What looked messy becomes organized. Your mind works exactly like that. If you keep shaking your life with constant movement, everything inside stays cloudy. You can't see direction. You can't hear intuition. You can't feel clarity. Stillness lets everything inside you settle. Let's bring this into real life. You are overwhelmed because you never stop long enough to process anything. You jump from task to task, from conversation to conversation, from responsibility to responsibility. Your mind becomes a room full of objects scattered everywhere. Every thought is a chair out of place. Every emotion is a box left open on the floor. Every worry is a lamp tipped on its side. You leave the room every day and step back into it the next morning. But it gets messier each time. Stillness is the moment you finally turn on the light in the room. You see the mess, you see the clutter, you see what needs attention, not all of it, not at once, just enough to breathe again. This is where the overthinking detox becomes relevant. Because overthinking is not a sign of a broken mind. It is a sign of a cluttered mind trying to solve everything at the same time. Stillness gives the mind fewer things to juggle. Let's explore the emotional psychology of this. Stillness gives your nervous system a chance to reset, but it also gives your inner self a chance to speak. Everyone has that quiet inner voice, the one that knows what's wrong, the one that knows what's missing, the one that knows the next step even when your mind refuses to believe it. But that voice gets drowned out by noise. Work noise, social noise, past noise, future noise. Stillness turns down the volume. Not completely. Just enough for you to finally hear yourself. Now let's talk about why the mind gets loud in the first place. A loud mind is usually a protective mind. It senses something changing. It senses a shift inside you. It senses a new direction forming. And because change feels unsafe, the mind tries to warn you with noise. Not because you're going the wrong way, but because the old version of you is panicking. Your brain is trying to keep you safe by keeping you stuck. Stillness breaks this pattern. It shows your brain that the quiet is not dangerous, that slowing down won't destroy you, that uncertainty isn't a threat. Here's a deep psychological truth. Your brain trusts what you give attention to. If you give attention to chaos, your brain thinks chaos is normal. If you give attention to stillness, your brain begins to relax. This is why even a few minutes of stillness can shift your entire emotional state. Let's imagine another stickman moment. A stickman sits in a small wooden boat in the middle of a lake. The wind is calm. The water is still. The clouds are open. At first, he is uncomfortable. The quiet feels strange. The lack of movement feels wrong. The stillness feels unnatural. But slowly, his breathing deepens. His shoulders drop. His thoughts slow. The lake doesn't change. The sky doesn't change. The world doesn't change. He changes. That's what stillness does. Stillness doesn't fix your life. Stillness fixes your awareness. Once your awareness returns, your decisions become clearer. Your direction becomes easier. Your emotions become lighter. Let's talk about emotions for a moment. You cannot heal what you rush through. You cannot understand what you avoid. You cannot calm what you ignore. Stillness is emotional honesty. It creates a space where you can finally feel things without being swallowed by them. This is where the self-worth formula plays a quiet role, because most people avoid stillness due to fear. Fear that their emotions will expose weakness. Fear that their thoughts will reveal insecurity. Fear that their confusion will make them less. But stillness builds self-worth because stillness teaches you that you can handle your inner world, that you are strong enough to sit with discomfort, that you have the capacity to face what you feel without falling apart. Let's address one more layer. Stillness is where your intuition wakes up. Intuition is not a mystical talent. It's the quiet intelligence of your deeper self. It's the part of you that notices patterns your conscious mind misses. It's the part of you that sees truth without explanation. It's the part of you that whispers the next step when logic is confused. Most people think they lack intuition. They don't. They just never sit still long enough to hear it. Imagine a stickman walking through a loud marketplace, vendors shouting, music playing, and people talking. He can't hear anything inside himself. But once he leaves the marketplace and steps onto a quiet path, he hears his own footsteps. He hears his breath. He hears his thoughts clearly. Your mind works the same way. Stillness is the quiet path. Let's talk about practical stillness. Stillness is not a technique. You don't need a ritual. You don't need candles. You don't need the perfect environment. Stillness is simply a pause, a moment where you do nothing on purpose, a moment where you give your mind a break from absorbing new information, a moment where you stop chasing clarity and let clarity come to you. It can be 5 minutes in your room. It can be 10 minutes sitting on the edge of your bed. It can be a short walk without your phone. It can be standing by the window while your thoughts breathe. Stillness is accessible anytime, anywhere, by anyone. Let's bring this chapter into its emotional center. Stillness reveals what truly matters. When the noise fades, you notice the real priorities. When the chaos quiets, you see what's worth keeping. When the storm softens, you see which direction pulls your heart. People think clarity is a lightning bolt. It's not. Clarity is the slow settling of thoughts inside a still moment. One more metaphor. Imagine a stickman standing in front of a calm lake. He throws a pebble in. Ripples form on the surface. The water becomes disturbed. But if he waits, if he doesn't throw more pebbles, the ripples fade. The water becomes smooth again. And he can see his reflection. Stillness lets you see yourself. Not the version the world sees, not the version you pretend to be. The real version. And once you see yourself, you can find your direction again. Let's close with the truth of this chapter. Your mind is loud because you're evolving. The noise is not the enemy. The noise is the signal. Stillness is the antidote. Stillness is how you hear your real voice. Stillness is how you find emotional balance. Stillness is how you access intuition. Stillness is how you regain clarity. Stillness is how you reconnect with the person you were always meant to become. You don't need to silence the noise. You need to stand still long enough for the noise to settle. This is the power of stillness. Not to erase your problems, but to turn chaos into clarity. Chapter 7. Rebuilding yourself without starting from zero. There comes a point in life when you look at yourself and feel like you need to start over. Not physically, not dramatically, just internally. You feel like too many habits became outdated, too many thoughts became heavy, too many dreams got buried under years of noise, distractions, and half-finished versions of you. You feel like the only way forward is a total reset. But here's the truth you haven't heard enough. You never start from zero, ever. Not even when everything falls apart. Not even when you feel broken, not even when your direction disappears. Because every version of you, strong or weak, confused or confident, always leaves behind something valuable. A lesson, a skill, a resilience, a scar that taught you something. A memory that shaped your character, a small victory you forgot to count, a failure that sharpened your awareness. Rebuilding yourself doesn't erase who you were. Rebuilding yourself is using every past version as raw material for the next one. This chapter is about shifting the way you see yourself. It's about understanding that rebuilding is not a restart. It's a redesign. Let's begin. Imagine a stickman building a little wooden house. He spent years adding pieces. Some beams are crooked. Some walls are shaky. Some parts look amateur. But some parts are strong. Some parts were crafted with care. Some parts hold deep meaning. One day he looks at the house and thinks, I need to rebuild this. But rebuilding doesn't mean burning the entire structure. It means keeping the strong beams, strengthening the weak ones, replacing what no longer fits, expanding what has potential. You are that house. Your identity is that structure. Your habits, beliefs, and experiences are the beams. You do not rebuild yourself by destroying the structure. You rebuild yourself by improving the architecture. Let's go deeper. Most people think rebuilding means drastic change. New job, new friends, new city, new lifestyle, new environment, but massive external changes often fail because internal alignment hasn't shifted. The real rebuild starts inside, and it starts with the most important psychological shift. You are not damaged. You are outdated. That's a completely different reality. Damage implies brokenness. Outdated implies evolution. You didn't fail. You outgrew your old self. You're not starting from nothing, you're starting from wisdom. Let's explore the core of why people feel like they must start from zero. When life becomes confusing, we look backward and only see the mistakes. We highlight the wrong roads. We replay the bad decisions. We focus on what didn't work. We amplify the moments we disappointed ourselves. And the mind does something cruel. It convinces us that all those experiences erased progress. But nothing is erased. Mistakes don't reset your progress. They refine it. Confusion doesn't erase your potential. It clears space for clarity. Failures don't put you at zero. They give you a sharper compass. This is where the self-worth formula quietly fits in. Because if your self-worth depends on perfection, you'll always assume you must start over. But when your self-worth is stable, you can rebuild without shame. Let's talk about the psychology of self-rebuilding. Rebuilding happens when identity shifts. Not suddenly, not explosively, but gradually. Identity shifts through experiences, not plans. Look at any period of real growth in your life. It wasn't a clean slate moment. It was a realization moment. A moment where a thought or feeling hit you so deeply that you couldn't continue being the old version anymore. You rebuild not because you failed. You rebuild because you matured. Now let's explore something practical. There are 3 pillars of rebuilding without starting from zero. Pillar 1, recognizing past versions as contributors, not obstacles. Pillar 2, choosing which pieces of yourself to keep. Pillar 3. Updating the structure instead of restarting the construction. Let's unpack them. Pillar 1. Recognizing past versions as contributors. Every past version of you taught you something. Even the ones you wish you could forget. The version of you that overworked taught you discipline. The version of you that loved deeply taught you emotional courage. The version of you that failed taught you resilience. The version of you that procrastinated taught you self-awareness. The version of you that overthought taught you how powerful your mind is. This is where the overthinking detox becomes part of your process. Because when your mind is full of regret, you can't see the usefulness of your past. Your past is not an enemy. Your past is a teacher. You rebuild by using past lessons, not by erasing them. Pillar 2. Choosing which pieces of yourself to keep. You don't outgrow everything. Some parts of you are timeless. Your empathy, your humor, your creativity, your loyalty, your strength, your resilience, your dreams that survive despite everything. Imagine a stick man going through an old toolbox. He finds rusty tools he no longer needs. He finds old habits that don't work anymore. But he also finds tools that still shine, qualities that still matter, skills that still help, wisdom that still guides. You are not here to replace your entire identity, you are here to refine it. That refinement is the real rebuild. Pillar 3. Updating the structure. Instead of restarting the construction. This is the heart of the chapter. Your identity is not something you throw away when life changes. It's something you update. Just like a phone or a home or a piece of software. When your phone slows down, you don't smash it against the wall. You update it. When your home feels small, you don't demolish it entirely. You renovate it. When your beliefs become outdated, you don't destroy your whole identity. You upgrade the framework. This is where the focus reset becomes quietly powerful. It teaches you that rebuilding is not about pressure. It's about choosing what matters and letting the rest fade away. Let's explore the emotional side of this. Starting from zero feels hopeless. Updating feels empowering. One gives you shame. One gives you direction. One says, everything is wrong. One says, some things just need shifting. Rebuilding is about perspective. The moment you stop seeing yourself as broken, you become rebuildable. Now let's explore a deeper truth. You already rebuilt yourself many times. You just didn't realize it. The person you were at 16, gone. The person you were at 20, upgraded. The person you were 2 years ago, evolved. Your identity has been rebuilding itself your entire life. It's natural. It's automatic. It's part of being human. But this time is conscious. This time, you are rebuilding with awareness. This time you're not reacting. You're choosing. Let's bring this into a stickman visual. Imagine a stickman with a backpack full of old blueprints. Blueprints from every age. Some pages are messy, some pages are beautiful, some pages are torn, some pages are brilliant. He sits down, he spreads them on the ground, and he picks the parts that still feel true. A piece from when he was hopeful. A piece from when he was brave. A piece from when he believed in himself. A piece from when he dreamed freely. He takes all those pieces, rearranges them, and creates a new blueprint. Not from zero, from experience. This is you. Let's address something emotional. Sometimes people avoid rebuilding because they feel guilty. Guilty for wanting more. Guilty for changing direction. Guilty for outgrowing old dreams. Guilty for leaving old versions behind. But guilt is misplaced here. You're not betraying your past by rebuilding. You are honoring it. Because the past version of you wanted progress. And rebuilding is progress. Let's talk about energy. Rebuilding yourself without starting from zero is less exhausting, less overwhelming, less chaotic. It does not drain your emotional battery. It replenishes it. This is where the energy reset fits beautifully. Not to boost your energy, but to free the energy you already have from the weight of old identities. Updating consumes less energy than restarting. This is why people who try to do a full restart burn out, collapse, give up after a few weeks. But people who rebuild keep going, stay grounded, feel aligned, feel hopeful, because their progress is sustainable. Let's explore another deep truth. Rebuilding is not about inventing a new life. It's about returning to the version of yourself that always felt most like home. The version you lost along the way. The version you muted to please others. The version you hid to avoid judgment. The version you abandoned because life got loud. You rebuild by returning, not by replacing. One more metaphor. Imagine a stickman standing in front of a large mirror, but the mirror is covered in dust. He wipes the dust gently, bit by bit, one corner at a time. Eventually, he sees his reflection clearly. Not a new face, his real face, the one that was always there. Rebuilding is dusting, not reinventing. Let's bring the chapter home. You are not broken. You are updating. You are not lost. You are reorganizing. You are not starting from zero. You are building on everything you've lived, learned, and survived. You have more tools than you realize, more strength than you remember, more experience than you give yourself credit for, more potential than you've ever used. Rebuilding is not a setback. It's a sign of maturity, a sign of awareness, a sign that you are ready for a new chapter of your identity. You're not restarting your life. You're rebuilding your foundation. Chapter 8. The moment you realize you were never lost, just growing. There is a moment, usually quiet and unexpected, when you look back at everything you've been through and finally understand something you never saw before. You weren't lost. You were growing. It didn't feel like growth at the time. It felt like confusion. It felt like pressure. It felt like wandering in a fog that refused to lift. It felt like standing in the middle of 1,000 invisible roads with no signs. But that moment, the moment you thought you lost yourself, was the exact moment your old identity became too small. Growth doesn't announce itself gently. It doesn't ring a bell. It doesn't send a message saying, "Get ready, your transformation is starting." Growth arrives disguised as disorientation. It arrives as heaviness. It arrives as emptiness. It arrives as uncertainty. It arrives as the feeling that your life is shifting beneath your feet. This chapter is about recognizing that shift for what it really is. Not a collapse, not a mistake, not a failure, a transition. Let's begin with something simple but profound. Imagine a stickman standing in a small square room. He's comfortable there. He knows the edges. He knows the corners. He knows how to move inside it without bumping into anything. But one day he starts feeling uncomfortable. The room feels tight. The air feels heavy. The corners feel closer than before. He panics and thinks, "I'm trapped. I'm falling behind. I'm losing myself." But what he doesn't realize is that the discomfort is not a trap. The discomfort is a signal that he's outgrown the room. The walls didn't close in. He expanded. Growth always feels like confinement at first. Let's go deeper. When life becomes confusing, your first instinct is to believe something is wrong. But confusion is not the sign of a wrong path. Confusion is the sign that your mind is reorganizing itself. Your identity is updating. Your priorities are shifting. Your desires are changing. Your inner compass is recalibrating. And recalibration doesn't feel smooth. It feels like everything inside you is moving all at once. This is where the overthinking detox becomes a quiet friend. Not because it eliminates thoughts, but because it helps you understand that mental noise is often the first step toward clarity. Your mind becomes loud when it's preparing for a new version of you. Now let's talk about the emotional side of this transition. When you feel lost, you assume you're going backward. You assume you've messed things up. You assume the path you're on is flawed. But paths don't reveal their meaning in the middle. They only make sense in hindsight. Think about every meaningful moment in your life. Did it look meaningful while it was happening? Or did it look ordinary, confusing, messy, maybe even painful? The truth is simple. Growth rarely feels like growth in the moment. It feels like friction. It feels like questioning. It feels like shedding old layers. It feels like holding on to outdated beliefs that no longer match your identity. Let's create a visual for this. Imagine a stickman walking through a long tunnel. It's dim, it's narrow, it's uncomfortable. He thinks he's going the wrong way. He thinks he should turn back. He thinks he's lost. But he's not lost. He's transitioning. The tunnel is not the destination. It's the bridge between who he was and who he's becoming. Growth always contains a tunnel, but the tunnel doesn't last forever. Let's explore another psychological truth. Feeling lost is often just your brain adjusting to a new level of awareness. You've learned something. You've grown in some way. You've become too aware to live the old way, but not clear enough to see the new way yet. This middle stage and the in-between identity feels like being lost, but it's not lost. It's expansion. This is where the self-worth formula becomes essential. Because when you don't have clarity, you start judging yourself. You start thinking you're not enough. You start believing you need to fix yourself. But you don't need fixing. You need patience. Let's make this practical. Growth feels like you questioning your habits, you feeling unsettled in routines that once felt normal, you sensing that your old dreams don't excite you anymore, you losing interest in people who once held your attention, you wanting a life that aligns with the person you're becoming, not the person you were. These are not signs of being lost. These are signs of evolution. Imagine a snake shedding its skin. The process looks chaotic, uncomfortable, confusing, but the snake is not lost. It's renewing. Or imagine a tree losing its leaves. At first glance, it looks empty, bare, lifeless. But the tree is not dying. It's preparing. Growth requires letting go before you can rebuild. Now let's talk about direction. People assume clarity comes first. They think they need a perfect plan before moving. They believe life should reveal the next chapter clearly. But clarity is a reward, not a starting point. You gain clarity by living, not by waiting. This is where the focus reset comes in. It reminds you that direction forms in motion, not in perfection. Let's explore something deeper. You often feel lost because your mind is comparing who you used to be to who you are becoming. There is friction between your past identity and your future identity. That friction creates emotional static. The static feels like confusion. The confusion feels like being lost. But confusion is simply growth without language yet. You're changing faster than your self-description, faster than your habits, faster than your comfort zone. Let's talk about your past. Your past was not a mistake, it was a foundation. Every version of you was needed to reach this stage, even the messy ones, even the heavy ones, even the lost ones. This is where the anxiety detox matters. Anxiety is often your mind processing old emotions so you can move forward clean. Your past added layers. Now growth is asking you to release some of those layers so a clearer version of you can emerge. Let's explore a stickman moment. A stickman stands in front of a large puzzle. The pieces are scattered. He tries to put them together, but nothing fits. He feels frustrated. He feels slow. He feels like he's doing something wrong. But then he looks closer and realizes something important. The pieces are changing shape. The puzzle is not broken. He is evolving faster than the pieces can settle. Growth feels like mismatched puzzle pieces because transitions don't click together instantly. This is why patience is crucial. You're not lost. Your pieces are rearranging. Let's address something emotional. You often think you're behind because you see others who look certain. But certainty is often performance. People present their clarity. They hide their confusion. They show the finished version. They bury the parts that look like transitions. Everyone experiences seasons where they question everything. They just don't broadcast them. You're not behind. You're human. Let's explore the idea of the direction one more time. Direction is not something you find. Direction is something you grow into. Life reveals the next step only when you're ready for it. Not when you panic for it. Not when you force it. Not when you compare yourself to others. Growth has timing. And your timing has been unfolding perfectly, even when it didn't feel that way. Now let's talk about the emotional climax of this chapter. There will come a day, maybe in the middle of a quiet morning, maybe during a late-night thought, maybe halfway through a simple task, when something clicks. Something inside you says, I'm not lost, I'm transforming. And in that moment, your entire inner world shifts. Your confusion turns into understanding. Your heaviness turns into clarity. Your doubt turns into direction. Your frustration turns into gratitude. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you finally see the truth. You were never lost. You were never behind. You were never failing. You were growing into the person you were always meant to become. Let's give this a final stickman image. A stickman walks through a long forest path. It's dark, it's unclear. He feels lost. But after a long time, He reaches a hill. He climbs, he looks back. And from that height, he sees the entire forest, the twists, the turns, the moments he thought he messed up, the parts where he thought he walked in circles, the sections that felt like dead ends. From the hilltop, everything makes sense. Every step had a purpose, every pause had a reason, every mistake had a lesson, every confusion had a meaning. He wasn't lost at all, he was moving, he was growing, he was becoming. This chapter is the hilltop moment, the moment where your whole journey becomes visible, the moment you realize you've been building yourself in ways you couldn't see yet. You finally understand. You were never lost. You were expanding into a bigger version of yourself, a version with more clarity, more depth, more strength, more truth. And now that you see that, your next chapter can begin. Your direction is yours again. Your identity is yours again. Your future is yours again.